So I have something that definitely happens occasionally, but it's always a little bit interesting whenever studios go this way. So Luminous Productions, which are the developers behind the recent PlayStation, I think, and PlayStation exclusive on console, and then I think it's also came out on PC, Forspoken. And they announced that they will no longer exist as a separate game studio. So for those who aren't aware, Luminous Productions originally began as kind of like an internal division at Square Enix. And then they kind of like splintered off and were acting autonomously, if you will, even though they technically were still under the parent company of Square Enix, but they were kind of off doing their own thing. And so they've made the announcement after their most recent release, which is Forspoken, that they are going to be kind of just going full force back under the umbrella as just one of the under Square Enix studios. And I just thought that was very interesting. Now, again, because they weren't ever fully autonomous and on their own and independent, really, I mean, it's not exactly the same thing, but it gave me kind of vibes of Bungie, how they've had a bit of this roller coaster where they were independent and then Microsoft bought them and then they got went independent again, and now Sony owns them. And it's just like, it's always kind of weird whenever you see this back and forth with whatever big studio that it is, or even if it's a smaller studio, it feels like, it makes me always want to say, like, do you have a little bit of that the grass is greener on the other side kind of thing, even though you've been on both sides of the fence? So like, can you just never, is it always just look prettier over there kind of thing? Because it makes you, I mean, obviously there's huge pros and cons to both sides of the equation, but I thought it was interesting, especially considering that was a pretty big game that just recently launched, and seems to be doing relatively well. I mean, I hadn't heard that it's done. I know there was a little bit of a rocky start from a performance standpoint, but like, at least in terms of how well it's been selling and everything, I feel like it's done pretty decently. So hopefully that didn't have anything to do with their decision. It's kind of just based on, hey, we kind of did the things that we wanted to do. Now we want a little bit more support to do maybe even bigger things or whatever that might mean. But still an interesting situation, because that kind of stuff doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah, especially with, like, it felt like that got a lot of press, that game. Like, it was a lot of hype, and then there was a lot of hate and hype, like, when it came out, and it felt very like either you loved it or you hated it. And and so I never know whether, I know as the owner, when you get bought, that's good because you got paid, but I never know as a company if it's actually good or bad. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, is it good to get bought and absorbed, or is it bad? Does it mean you made a bunch of money, or does it mean you need money? That's right. Does it mean that, you know what I mean? So I've never understood, like, you know, and people talking about, you know, Ubisoft when it was going through its troubles, and I guess EA had a bunch of layoffs this last week too, and so, like, you know, and people are like, well, people need to buy them up, and you're like, shoot, so anytime buy them up comes up, it always seems like it's because the place is in trouble, not because the place is doing so great. Right. You know, so it's just interesting because it's hard to know what the numbers and all the press meant for Forspoken, if it was good or bad.